welcome to the Put Up, everybody. I'm A.K.A. the Wizard, and this is where the untold stories are heard. We got an action-packed episode for you this time. We're going to do a little something different. This is like, the fifth episode of the Put Up that we've done this year. So if you've been following us along, thank you so much. If you're just here for the first time, like, subscribe, and share, and we're going to get this thing on the move. Today, we got a very special guest, guys. Chris Collins is here with us today. What's up, bro? How you doing?
Yeah, I'm pretty good, man. I just had a crazy week so far, just like mixing and everything. Freaking music streamings just hit 1 trillion streams this month, like the fastest ever, I think. And yeah, it's just been crazy, man. So like we're just making music, we're getting releases ready for everything. I got a freaking concert coming up in April. Actually, I booked my first concert in Guelph, Ontario. So like that's coming up. But yeah, everything's just working out right now, man.
That's amazing, man. You said before this session that you had a co-op student hit you up or something?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I just had a co-op student, too. So, like, just setting up, getting ready to come on the Put Up here, and, like, all of a sudden my kids are screaming at me, like, there's a knock at the door, Dad. So I go upstairs, and it's a grade 12 student, and he's looking for a co-op position at a recording studio. And so I brought him in and I showed him the place, and like, yeah, it was crazy. It was like this thing where he's just like shook. He saw this crazy place, but I can't offer co-op or anything. So I'm just like, yeah, this is kind of what you'll get into, but you're gonna have to like go to a bigger studio to like get a co-op position or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so it's like this crazy thing where like the whole industry has shifted, and like now, like, look, people are coming to your little studio to try and like figure out like what a job's gonna be, and the whole like ecosystem has changed, right? There's no longer like 5 big studios in the city anymore to like go and work at as a job, like employment, right? So it's more like you have to tell them like you're gonna have to do this all yourself, like create a business or something, right? That's interesting, man. We're gonna jump into this interview, I think, man. Let's get started right from the beginning. Like, can you tell us about your creative journey? How did you like start out and get started as a producer and artist?
I don't know what happened right there. That was nuts. Like I started when I was like probably, I don't know, 5 years old or something like that, man. Like watching my babysitter, she'd come over from across the road there and like babysit us or whatever. She's like 60 years old. She'd sit down at our piano and play it. And I would just stand there mesmerized watching her, and like just kind of absorbing whatever it was. And I'd like, she'd leave and I'd sit there and try and pluck out whatever it was she was doing, right? And like just learned how to play the piano by ear essentially over time. And then like by the time I was like 6 years old, I got like a cassette recorder for Christmas. I stole one of my parents' cassette tapes and I started recording. I just set it right up on top of the piano right there and I just started playing into it, right? So, I mean, I've been recording since like as long as I can remember. Really wrote my first song right there on the spot, right? And like my whole family is kind of musical, right? Like my sister knew how to play the piano as like read music growing up, and like my mom sang in choirs and stuff, like church cantatas for Christmas and all that kind of stuff. So like really musical, everybody in my family, right? So then like, what was it? About 12 years old, I think it was, I got a guitar and like took 4 years of guitar lessons and learned how to do all that, and like just kept building on it and everything. And I played in a youth group band on stage in front of like 100 people for a couple of years, like every week. And yeah, it's just it was a whole thing through high school. Like I took piano courses and like all kinds of stuff. Bands. I was in like the jazz band in grade 8 or something, playing drums, and like just I did everything musical I could to get through high school and everything. And then I stopped. I took like 4 or 5 years off. I think like throughout high school I did like co-ops and audio, but then I went to work for a few years and just like tried to find myself or whatever. And then like after that, I decided I was going to record. I was going to become an engineer. I was going to just quit my job, go to college, and learn the craft of actually like doing this music thing for real, right? So it was like that's the point where, and I just had like my first kid and stuff, like my daughter, my oldest daughter there. So like It's just this turning point in my life, and I just decided I was going to go and do music after that. And we just fully jumped in and moved down to London and took the college course and everything. And after that, came back here where I am now and started a studio for 6 years where it was open to the public. And that was wild, man. It was like a couple hundred rappers coming through my studio, and like I would record them every night. And I think there's one track on SoundCloud maybe that has like an actual release. Otherwise, there's no work to show for all that time. So like I made a decision about 2019 to just close it down because it just wasn't working out, right? So we did that, and I started working privately, and I found like a couple artists to work with that were actually going to make it and like put music out and release it, and that's how we started building this thing, right? So yeah, that's like my history.
Man, that's a crazy history. Like so much has gone on throughout the years that like prepared you for this day or whatever, right? So yeah, that's some crazy stuff, man. How would you describe your sound or style, and like what makes it stand out?
Man, so I come from like this Christian background, right? Where we were in church with like the gospel music. Like when I was really little, we went to like this church where it was like hymns every Sunday. You'd like bust out a book and like sing the song with the whole church kind of thing, right? So like that's what I started out with hearing, and then we wanted to get into like punk rock music, right? We started liking things like Sum 41 when it came out, and like Blink 182 and all that kind of stuff. Me and my brother, right? So like when we got instruments and stuff, actually our first drum kit came from that church. And yeah, I was just back there like last week playing on the stage. It's the funniest thing. But yeah, we got all that stuff, and we wanted to learn like rock music, right? We wanted to jam out and like play hard. So like my style developed as like a result of like this really soft music, and then like punk rock, and then when we were about like I think 10 or 11 is when Eminem came out with the White Album there, and like hip hop started influencing stuff, right? So like over time, like we've just developed into this like what you hear today is like this like gospel influenced pop music with a little bit of like punk rock flavor into it or something.
Okay, so that's interesting. Like mixing of like gospel music with like rap or something. They're like polar opposites, right? So like, how does that work?
Yeah, I guess it is kind of like a unique sound, right? Like where usually you wouldn't like back in the day in church, you wouldn't find like guitars and stuff. It's like anti-religious to have drums and guitars and bass guitars and all that stuff. And I feel like right around the time when I learned how to make music, it was like that was kind of like coming out of the church. Like now when we go to churches, you see like full on like production rock bands and stuff playing with lights and
Right.
the full rig and the whole thing, right? PA systems, the works. So it's like yeah, it's kind of weird that like things transitioned over time from like this really soft, like innocent thing at a church to like this like heavy thing, right?
Yeah, that's definitely interesting, man. It looks like it's working out for you, though, right? So, like, okay, can you walk us through like the creative process from like the very idea to like completion type thing, like a full release? How does that work for you?
So that's a loaded question. Actually, I think I like what inspires my process of making a song is like tragedy usually. Some big event or some life thing that happens that causes me to like have to get my emotion out in some way that's like not talking or whatever. I use the music to like get the stress out of the traumas, you know? So like the song you'll hear first today is like after I got out of jail and I was like making the decision to come back home and like make things right and everything. That's the whole story about that song, right? So it's like this big life changing moment always happens to like cause my music creation process, you know?
Well, that's quite something. Yeah, like it's quite common for like people with tragedies to write music about it. It's like a common theme in a lot of that kind of stuff, right? In a minute, we're gonna go to a music break. Your first song, actually, "I'm Coming Back to You." We're gonna hear it. How do you get from like the very start of a process of a song to like the completion of it, type thing? Like, walk us through the process a little bit.
Yeah, so like how do I get from like the idea to the finished product? Like it's the weirdest thing to me. I don't just sit there and write music like a regular artist writes music. The songs come to me. They're almost fully written or whatever. I hear the full production in my head right off the bat, right? It's like I don't really sit there like I know seeing other artists and stuff that all kinds of different processes, from like humming it out and like creating a melody to like all kinds of different ways, right? But like to me, the music is somehow downloaded from the ether or something into my brain, and I'm now hearing a song that nobody's ever heard before, and it's just my job to get it out then. So yeah, it's the craziest thing to me, where it just like it'll come to me. I almost have to capture lightning in a bottle in a way and like get it out in some way where I can remember it, whether it's like a voice note in my phone, like humming parts of it, or like just getting in the studio and like putting something down on it, right? Just to get that idea like concreted in physical form so I don't forget it, right? Yeah, it's the craziest thing to me. Like that's why you don't see so many releases from me, because I'm like, how am I gonna get the next one out, man? I gotta like somehow make that lightning thing happen again, right?
Well, I mean, I hope lightning in a bottle can happen over and over for you again. We're gonna actually take a music break now and hear your first song. I'm coming back to you. Do you want to preface it a little bit? Let us know what it's about.
Yeah, so I mean, I said that it was like about when after I got out of jail and stuff. That's like, I'm not gonna get into that story. That's a whole interview in itself, I think. Yeah, and then I wrote this track, and it just kind of came out of me, of like an expression of what needed to happen, and like almost provided me with like solace or like a plan of action of what to do next after, you know. So yeah, this is I'm coming back to you.
Well, let's roll it. What do I do when I come back? Do I go right into it? I do it for you alone. True, yeah. Well, welcome back to the Put Up, everybody. I'm A.K.A. the Wizard, and we're here with Chris Collins today. And what you just heard was "I'm Coming Back to You" by him. What a great song! You can feel the emotion dripping out of it as you listen to it. You know, we're gonna keep the interview moving on. Chris, what's been the biggest challenge in your career so far, and how did you overcome it?
Oh man, I think probably since I've released music, or when I was starting to release my songs, not having a network of anybody. Like I was just brand new. I just jumped online and decided I was gonna like try and get into it, right? And it's like that whole process of like I paid thousands of dollars to try and figure out like a marketing strategy to try and like build this network. So I mean, I'm building it now, and it's like it's working and everything, but like it took me a lot of money and a lot of just understanding and like how to start like making a fan base from scratch. Essentially, that was the hardest thing I've found so far.
Interesting, yeah. It's a interesting landscape to try and like figure out from the beginning, right? Like, and then you end up spending money to try and figure it out and all this stuff, right? So like, yeah, that's wild, man. Yeah, was it worth it? Like the money that you spent?
Yeah, like it ends up being that like I know you could like waste a lot of money on ads and get nowhere, right? Or like a lot of money on the wrong person that doesn't give you the right roadmap or whatever. But I feel like I got lucky, man. I worked with this artist management named Big Stowe. Shout out Big Stowe. He's a like a professional marketing branding guy, and yeah, he helped me figure out how to make everybody understand the brand and everything, and like start to garner people's attention and stuff. So yeah, it's like finding the right people to work with. So maybe, I mean, that could be a shortcut, is just finding a guy like him where like you can kind of like sidestep the whole process of learning where to go and get that information, right?
Yeah, I mean, it proves that there's a way to the plan too, right? There's a way forward. You just need to know what to do next, right? So, okay, on the flip side, what's been one of the most successful career moments you've had so far? Tell us about that. What are you most proud of, bro?
Man, I think when I released my first song, honestly, that's when I was the most proud, because I'd like released music. I got out of college in 2014, right? And I think by then I had a couple tracks on SoundCloud or something, right? And back then, like SoundCloud didn't release music. They weren't like a DSP. They're much different. It almost died between then and now. And it's resurfaced as like a new network again, or new words and new people or whatever, but it's been around for a long time, right? So like I ended up taking that music off the internet after I couldn't figure out how to get anybody to listen to it, and I just kind of gave up, right? And then that's when I like focused more on like building the studio stuff, right? And like bringing people in and like recording instead of doing my own work, right? But I knew in the back of my mind the entire time, it's like you got to release your own music, you got to show people how it's done, right? Like lead the way in the whole thing. So it's like the moment I released that I'm coming back to you track, it was like this game changer for me, where I was like, oh my gosh, this is it for real now. Like I'm not going back. I'm not taking it offline. It's everywhere. It's out. This is me now, right? And it's like a moment of like defining yourself as an artist, where like that is the image that Chris Collins is, like that soft, like love song thing, right? So it's like it meant everything to my career so far, I think.
Well, I mean, there you have it. That's amazing, bro. And yeah, it's all about trying to get your name out there and get recognized, right? So, like, okay, we'll switch gears a little bit, more to the technical side of things. Like, how do we make the art? What tools and techniques do we use to bring the ideas to life? Like,
That's a good one, because I mean, look around you, right? Like you got all the tools in the world to make music with around me all the time. So it's like almost for me, it's finding the right sounds and stuff to like make what I want to hear to come out of my head, right? Because I already have that picture inside of my head of what it should sound like. So it's like you got all these tools around you to like record and like use all these different flavors and things, like spices, I call them, right? Sauces, if you will, right? And it's like, yeah, just finding the right things to combine together to make a professional sounding sound that you want to have on a record, right? So it's like I'm using a combination. I usually use like stereo mics on guitars, right? A couple of NT5 stereo mics when we record guitars here. I'm using like a Slate VMS microphone, EMU mic that can do a bunch of different like sounds of different mics and stuff, right? I mean, it's just a good mic on its own, just to record a vocal. It's nice and clean, but like all kinds of stuff, right? We got the whole mix rig going on, right? Custom built amplifiers, like the works. So yeah, we got all the tools we need to make amazing tracks, you know?
what about like software? Like, what DAW do you use or whatever to record the stuff?
Oh yeah, I'm recording in Pro Tools. Like mostly, I've tried other DAWs and stuff over the years, just trying out. Like I think I own a copy of Mixbus 32C, Sonar Platinum before it became BandLab. We learned Logic in school, right? But I landed on Pro Tools because of its user friendliness and just I don't know, just it clicked with me, and I've just been able to like use it. I've been using it since I was probably like, actually, it's funny. Hold on a sec. You gotta see this. This is actually like a Pro Tools. They call it Pro Tools M Powered. Back in the day, this is like the original iLock key that we had. And like the back of it right here, you can actually see like a slot you used to put like an SD card in there to activate plugins. I mean, now we use like online managers for that stuff, right? So it's kind of funny.
Man, yeah, like the iLocks now are like a quarter of that size and not red, so like that's nuts, bro. Okay. Okay, well that's kind of crazy. Okay, so is there like a unique approach you take that other artists might not consider when you're making your art or whatever?
You know what? I don't know if it's a unique approach to like it's more the fact that like songs come to me. It's not like I'd sit there and like map out each track, right? They're already written when they come to my brain. So it's a matter of just like, it's not the arrangement. The arrangement's done. It's like filling sounds or whatever, right? So it's like, I don't know, trying different instruments out on the same lines of a melody and stuff to see if like a different sound would do better on a line compared to like, say, a guitar compared to like a string section or something playing the same part. Which one would you actually use in the production? You know what it should play, but you don't know which sound it should have or whatever, right? So it's like, yeah, use like I sit there and I'll do the same thing on like 5 different instruments and just hear whichever one I think should be the one for that track, you know? If that's like some weird special thing that I do.
Okay, well, we're going to hear some more special things that you do, actually. We're going to go to your second track called You Alone. Do you want to preface it? Let us know what the track's about.
Yeah, You Alone, man. This is like a coming of age track, man. I've got some amazing feedback on it already, actually, just from like guys that have heard it and stuff in the network in the community there. And it's a song about like growing up and not knowing who you want to be and then realizing it and figuring it out and like making a plan for moving forward and just like the celebration of like the whole idea of lifescape and like how everything's uncertain, you know? So it's like this coming of age track. It's just this positive thing. All of my music, it has this like positive, clean message. You know, there's no swearing in it. It's always like this love of positive, focus centered music. So I hope you enjoy it. You Alone.
Yeah, let's roll it.
When your life starts finally to make sense, who would have thought that these days would ever end? It was a time when you thought you were a waste. Why did you never get to see it face to face?
Looking good though, right? We're recording it.
And did you think that it was all you could do to just stay strong? All that matters now is what you gotta do. You alone have found your resting place. You alone, no more than words could say.
Practice.
You alone can
Yo, I almost nailed that
go
shit perfect so far.
ways. You alone. Now your life has finally begun to change. Your time's paid off for now, nothing bad remains. Just realize how much of your life you saved, so you don't have to live with all of your mistakes. Now do you think you can recall another time you were this strong? All that matters now is what you plan to do. You alone have found your resting place. You alone, no more than words could say. You alone can't let go of your ways. You alone. Now do you think you can recall another time you were this strong? All that matters now is what you plan to do. You alone have found your resting place. You alone, no more than words could say. You alone can't let go of your ways. You alone.
Welcome back to the Put Up, everybody. I'm A.K.A. the Wizard, and we're here with Chris Collins today in the Put Up. And what you heard was You Alone. Bro, you said it was on the radio,
yeah,
right?
Man, so it's on the radio. The song. So like, what was it like? I think 2 years ago back, I was working with an artist, and we ended up going to a radio station locally here. And it was just before I released my first song that you heard there earlier. And So ever since then, we've had this relationship with the radio director, and every time I release a track, we send it to him, right? So I sent him "You Alone" as soon as it came out, and he put it right on the radio the next day. And actually, who was it? One of the other station directors or managers or something. They contacted me via email after and were like, "Hey, do you want to do a station call tag for us? Record it out, and like we can play it before your track type thing before the track plays on the radio." So actually, yeah, I sat there one day and I recorded like, "Hey, it's Chris Collins, and you're watching or listening to 102.7 CKMS Radio Waterloo, right?" And it's like this professional sounding little hook radio announcer call thing that I did for them. So they're running that too.
Interesting. Okay, so like, how do you get a song on the radio? Like, otherwise, how does that work? Like, you see them on mainstream,
Yeah,
and
like,
like,
I'm right up there with all that A-list talent now, I guess, right? Like right up on the radio doing all the call signals and all that stuff. So, I mean, you can get there. I'm a testament of like the whole progress and process of this recording art thing.
okay, that's interesting. So you got songs on the radio. So like, how does that progress? Like, there's a whole network of people. Like, how do you get your songs onto more than one station? All that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so like I ended up calling or trying to message a bunch of like radio announcers, like local big, like I call them Illuminati stations. They're like the mainstream, like syndicated, feeded networks, the big ones, right? That everybody listens to. And I started trying to like message them and get in the door, trying to get my songs on their radios too, after I got it on the other local radio, right? And I found out that it's like an entire like almost like a unspoken vetting process of like because like those I talked to one of the announcers at the station just privately and he's like, "Yeah, man, you gotta like hit up the college radio stations and like the other stations first before like you got to generate the buzz yourself. We're not going to look at you personally," kind of thing, right? Because their hands are tied essentially as a radio announcer on those stations where it's like they get handed a list every day and they just play it, right? They don't really create that list per se, like the music industry as a whole does in a way through a network that I found out of like station directors and stuff that are very tight-lipped about how that all works. So yeah, it's like an entire process of trying to like break into the radio networks and everything and get yourself noticed. And it's more just it ends up being more just building the brand and getting enough attention on yourself that works, that people start to see it and ask for it. And eventually these station managers are getting asked to put it into the list. And that's when they start hitting the mainstream stations, I believe, right?
Interesting. Okay. So, I mean, in the same vein, like connecting with your audience, then, like, how do you make your art relatable to them so that they want it on the radio, right?
Man, the whole thing about like connecting with the artists and like the fans of it and everything is like telling the story and just being authentic. I think like I'm doing it for me when I make the song. You know what I mean? I've actually I think I heard Rick Rubin or say it or it's on a quote on one. Like, you know, he posts those quotes all the time or whatever. But he says it's like it's not about the fan. It's like the fan's gonna enjoy the art when you've done the song for yourself and you put your spirit and your creativity and your emotion, whatever you're feeling into it. That's what's gonna connect with your fans, right? So I really try to like, and it's like because my songs are like pre-written in a way from the ether, in my opinion, or whatever. It's like it's how do I get that to connect with the person through the way that I choose my sounds and the way that that thing is portrayed across to them, then, right? So it's like yeah, it's just like this thing where it's like I do it for myself and I try and make this thing that's going to relate to somebody else. And that's the funniest thing about music. Like I write it for my reason. It affected me in whatever way, but then somebody hears it and it affects them in a totally different way. And that's so cool, right? It means something totally different, but because I put my soul into it, they're able to connect to it with their soul in their way, right?
Man, that's so beautiful, man. It's the honest truth. Yeah, it's like what they take away from it, right? So, like, what do you hope they take away from your art when and like what they experience through it? Like, what are you leaving them with?
Man, the gift of positivity, honestly. Like when I made the brand, like I've always had these songs in my mind, right? And like always wanted to I've tried to record them out multiple times. It's always had the same underlying positivity thing. Every song that I make kind of like speaks of like a better time or a better way or a better place or something bigger, the future. You know, it's always like forward looking. Even when you look on the past of the dark, like I have a very dark past, drugs and all kinds of fun things, but it's like looking back on it, and then like each song, it kind of like tells you what to do after that. Kind of like it never leaves you on that negative kind of like kilter, right? It's always about positivity. That's what I want to leave everybody with whenever I release my music.
All right, well, looking to the future, then. I mean, what current projects are you working on? What's next for you? What's coming up in the future?
So I got my concert coming up. First one I've ever done. Well, I did one like 5 or 6 years ago, a little like pub setup kind of thing. But yeah, I signed on to a bill on April 4th in Guelph, Ontario, actually, for a bill for the night of like, it's called Neon Notes. So it's like kind of like a solidarity type concert with what's going on in the United States with the election and the deportations and all this stuff about like human rights and stuff. So it's like we're having a concert that night to come together for everybody kind of thing. And I found out actually, like I signed on to it, and like unknowingly they send me the flyer for it, and my client White Lies on there too. So it's like we're gonna be up on stage together for the first time that night. It should be real interesting. But yeah, other than that, just tons of releases. So I think I might, one of the songs I'm gonna play that night on stage, I think I'm gonna release it that night too. I've already put an instrumental out on SoundCloud of it that got good reception. But yeah, I think I'm gonna do the vocals and fully finish that track off and like have it ready to go so people can take it home with them that night or something. Should be a good time.
Oh my! Did we just get like an exclusive song drop notice on our channel today? I think we just did, didn't we? Okay, so how can collaborators get involved with your work, support you? Like, where do they find you? All that stuff.
Man, this was honestly, this was part of the entire branding strategy thing. Now that you say that, it's like I didn't have a place for you to go before, right? I had to develop the website, chriscollinsmusic.ca, where you can go and find all of my different things that I do, including like mixing, sound effects, like all that kind of stuff, right? And yeah, it was like this whole thing. So like you can find me everywhere now as a result of doing this branding, marketing type research and like working on that, right? So I'm on all the like streaming platforms, all DSPs with the 2 singles that you heard there. You can find me on Twitter. You can find me on Facebook, even as myself. You know, you can find me on Instagram. You can find me TikTok, everywhere, man. So yeah, I mean, we like getting the real shit, all that stuff, man. We're just trying to build a whole network of everybody, a big family, you know?
Yeah, man, that's amazing, and you can't discount the whole idea of like marketing and the whole branding strategy and all that stuff, right? Well, I mean, this has been a great interview, bro. Thanks for coming on today. We're pretty much done. All the links and everything are below us here. You can get Chris's info everywhere. Thanks for coming today, everybody, joining us for the put up. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe to the video, and have a great afternoon.